Welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lang. Today, we're going deep into entrepreneurship through acquisition. ETA meets agency M&A story. Julia Hensel bought LexiGate, a law firm SEO agency, and then a year later, less than a year actually, bought a review removal service business to expand their capabilities. Along the way, she installed EOS, built a real outbound system to help foster lead generation for the agency, and really is turning this legal niche into a cross-selling flywheel. She's joined by her husband and frequent co-conspirator, Grant Hensel, founder of Nonprofit Megaphone, an agency he's had for 9 years, and Entrepreneurial Capital, their fund that's going out and supporting and investing in others who are going out and trying to buy businesses through this ETA model. He brings a wealth of knowledge in regards to agent experience, how they sourced the deal, and how they ultimately closed. So if you're an operator eyeing your first acquisition, or an agency owner wondering how you can add on to expand, this one is an almanac. Let's jump in. Grant, Julia, thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Peter.
Now, for listeners who don't know yet, you are from the agency world. Well, one of you kind of are. And then the other one recently joined. So give us a little bit of background, independently maybe. And then now, how did you find yourself in the same industry and the advantages that brings?
I can start. So I started a marketing agency called Nonprofit Megaphone 9 years ago now, which does digital marketing for nonprofits, and had a lot of fun, and it continues to grow. And we now have 60 something employees, 63 employees, something like that. And then my wife, Julia, and I acquired another agency, which she can tell you about, which does SEO for law firms.
Awesome. Yeah, while Grant was having a great experience growing Nonprofit Megaphone, I was living life in the corporate world, which I really enjoyed. I was in the consulting world. So I was a project leader at Boston Consulting Group, working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies on their strategies. And I really enjoyed what I did there. I think I, meanwhile, got to see Grant's experience with Nonprofit Megaphone, and really loved seeing the ownership and creativity that he was able to express through having an awesome team and being able to shape the future of NPM with them together. And so I wanted to take a hop into the more entrepreneurial world. Technically, if we rewind even further, Grant and I met in entrepreneurship club in college. So I've always had an interest in diving into that world. And so when the opportunity came up to pursue that through acquisition, I was excited to take a step in that direction.
So finally go into the thing that you're interested in and where you met.
Exactly.
So you went into the throes of management consulting and a real career, while Grant went off and became an entrepreneur.
Bingo.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of us is more thoughtful, and it's Julia.
You could say thank you, Julia, because she allowed you to experiment for the last 9 years. But with that comes a lot of freedom, and now you both have it. So help me understand how you went from entrepreneurship, starting your own business, to management consulting, to buying a business and you stepping out of corporate America.
Yeah. Well, I was very busy at Boston Consulting Group in my day job. We had Grant kind of lead the charge on the search process to find a company to acquire. So I can let him share more about how that process went down.
We basically set out to buy a business that Julia would run. Originally, we started fairly broad, but as time went on, we realized that this was a big swing for us, and we wanted to do it in a world that we had the greatest amount of familiarity possible. And that ultimately led us to, like, I have run a marketing agency for a long time. Let's buy another marketing agency. So at least we know that we're not making foolish mistakes that an amateur would make. At least if we make mistakes, it'll be mistakes that are still informed by experience, which ended up, I think, being the right call. Because I do more investing in this universe now. And anyway, I think it was the right call to sort of stick with what we knew.
Yeah, the household domain expertise being deployed gives you a lot of leverage. And Julia, we talked about how helpful it is to have someone who's been on the journey in the same house as you. I too met my wife in university. We started our first venture out of college together. What's it been like working together, at least within the same domain versus where you were before? You have way more in common now.
Yeah, it's been incredibly helpful having Grant's experience. I think one of the most important things for the business since we acquired it has been implementing EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And that's something where Nonprofit Megaphone has been implementing and using EOS over the past many years. And so having Grant's expertise, he kind of worked as like a quasi implementer for us to develop our vision and mission and all of our standing up all of our L10s and scorecards and all those types of things. So really having him in the weeds with us on that has been really helpful. And then it's also just been helpful having advice on how to continue to grow. So a lot of Nonprofit Megaphone's growth has been leveraging cold email. And so being able to use some of his expertise in that as well has been helpful. So I don't know. It would have been difficult if I had to like pay someone for all this advice. So it's been nice being able to get his input.
You didn't
And
pay
I would-
Grant?
Yeah, exactly. There's a concept called independent sponsor where someone like buys a business and puts in a management team to run it or whatever. And it's just like, I've gotten the universe, but it's been a lot of fun. And I learned a lot from Julia as well. So Julia has done, and maybe we'll get to this, but Julia has actually grown her business again through another acquisition that they made of a complementary service. And that has been very inspiring for just me to see how that rolls. Because it actually went quite smoothly. It's a helpful thing potentially for Nonprofit Megaphone down the road. So lots of wonderful cross-pollination in the Hensel household.
I'm curious for the listener who is interested in feeling comfortable with buying a business. Both of you came from entrepreneurship and management consulting. How did ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, how did buying a business get on your radar? How did you get comfortable with it? And then walk us through the process. Like you said yes to it and started your search. Kind of get the listener up to speed as if they were trying to, repeat that journey themselves.
We're nerds. So we actually both went to business school at Booth and knew people through that world who did the entrepreneurship path, through acquisition path, where they bought businesses and ran them. And there's different ways to do it. There's a thing called traditional search where you raise a search fund and you end up being sort of like a minority owner of a business and have a board. And then there's self-funded search where you just buy a business your own dang self and then you run it and you're in charge. And maybe you have investors, maybe you don't. And we ended up doing the latter. And just, yeah, I mean, took like a great class, but there's wonderful resources that exist. I mean, Peter, you create wonderful resources that are specific to the agency world, which are fantastic. We were just doing like more general resources about, okay, how does this work? How do you find businesses to buy? How do you talk to brokers? And yeah, much trial and error later. It ended up taking us 9 months to find something to buy, which we felt like we got lucky in the grand scheme of things. I know that you've shared that you work with folks and are able to help them do it in a much faster way, which is incredible. So yeah, it was a lot of trial and error and just learning from people who'd come before us.
You had mentioned potentially not acquiring an agency first. Did you actually start sourcing and reaching out to businesses that didn't fit that criteria? And then you honed in? Walk us through kind of how you got to agencies.
We started by looking at transactions with brokers. So businesses that have been listed for sale and the owner was actively trying to sell them. So not doing off-market deals, just because I wanted to see how this works and get reps under the belt. That's never something I'd done before. And that ended up working out. We ended up submitting 4 LOIs, letters of intent, which was like getting under contract to buy a business. 1 was not accepted. The other 3 were accepted. 2 of them fell apart for a variety of very fun reasons. And the 4th was the business that we ultimately bought. As with each LOI, we basically zoomed in more. We started with digital businesses in general, but then we kept zooming in to what ended up ultimately being a marketing agency.
Yeah, the filtering downstream. Oh, it happens to be the same thing Grant owns, which then you see all the benefit around that. For those who don't know, what was it like interacting with brokers and getting those early reps? How did you feel? Like there's often an imposter syndrome. You're using this as discovery. A lot of the conversations with brokers is refining your buy box, and you're using this outreach as just honing in on what feels like is the best fit for us. Expand on that a little bit.
The biggest thing a broker is concerned with is your legitimacy as a buyer. They're trying to determine as quickly as possible, are you a tire kicker or are you someone who could actually acquire the business that they're trying to sell? Your community, Peter, is, my understanding is a lot of people that own businesses and are now trying to grow through acquisition. And that is such a powerful thing. Like I would say, if you're having a conversation with a broker or anyone who's selling a business, leaning on that is exactly what we did. And it was very helpful because it separates you from the vast majority of buyers immediately. Most people do not own any businesses and they're trying to buy a first one. And it is so helpful to demonstrate, you're a real person who has done this before. And so that was the biggest thing. Brokers often get like sort of bad reputation for not being that responsive or not being that helpful. But a lot of it, like if you think about it from their perspective, is just they're getting a ton of random people reaching out and they have no idea if they're legitimate. And you kind of need to demonstrate that to them early and often.
Because a lot
So
of people just watch some YouTube video somewhere on like buy a business for no money down, and then here they are, and that's what the broker is trying to weed through.
even in proprietary search, right? A lot of business owners are getting hit up from people who learn from YouTube videos, read Walker Dybo's book, Buy Then Build, or How to Buy a Small Business. Then there's all these coaches that exist within the ecosystem about buying businesses. And so there's a lot of noise. And, people go, well, I don't respond to these things. So I get an email once a week from some random person who I can't even figure out is credible online. So wait, not only is Grant your husband, he's your EOS implementer. He's your corporate business development during your search. He also was your domain expert, kind of flag waving to your prospective acquisition target. Grant, you're so helpful.
So that's the funny thing is it's like everything that you're describing, yes, is wonderful, but it's like the actual work is done operating the business, which I think people forget because it's like buying a business and running it successfully is like running a marathon and then climbing a mountain. I ran the marathon. Yes, fine. But now Julia's climbing the mountain. And the mountain climb is actually the much harder.
Yeah, deals are easy and seductive. Value creation and operational excellence is much harder. Grant's like, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm like, see ya.
Grant's also a nerd, so he would do this for fun, which he did.
Well, let's talk about the deal. So this was an opportunity. You submitted LOIs. This one became the deal you ultimately ended up moving forward to. How'd you feel when you got your first LOIs approved and signed by the seller? Was that exciting? How did you interpret that first step in this buy process?
First ever LOI we got signed was very exciting. And then we realized that all their financials were inaccurate because they were marking debt as revenue accidentally through no fault of their own. The bookkeeper was wrong. But for this deal that actually ended up closing, we were very excited because we had chatted with the seller. And actually the seller's CFO, who's still a member of the team, joined the call as well, which was just wonderful. And we got a sense that these are like great people that we would love to be in business with or do a transaction with. And what we did is after a first very good call, we immediately said, like, we would love to come meet you in person. And they were actually international. They were in Romania. And so because Julia is still working crazy hours in BCG land, went to Romania and like met a lot of the team and had spent a lot of time with the seller, a lot of time with the seller's family, a lot of time with the leadership team. And that started to get us really excited because like I think there's a meaningful opportunity for us to sort of steward this business into the next chapter. And yeah, I will say though, it also became more real and that there's an interesting feeling. I've never surfed, but I imagine it's like right as the wave is about to crest, you're like, we're gonna have to commit to this or possibly get destroyed by the ocean current. And so there's certainly trepidation in that moment as well.
But you did something really interesting. So typically most sell side and buy side process starts with a meet each other call and it's just kind of like hear about the business, get a vibe for each other, figure out if there's this likeness, there's positive energy around an opportunity. And the second call is like a deep dive into the business. Like, okay, let's run through it. Let's help me understand the thing that you're taking to market or the thing that you've been running for a long period of time. You did that in person. You flew to Romania. Grant, you set yourself apart quite quickly. That's an extensive investment early on. Did you feel like you needed to do that? What led you to take that trip internationally for the second conversation?
We love in person personally to the greatest extent possible. We think it's so helpful with just getting to know the seller. It gave us an opportunity to meet the team, which is so valuable because if, the team dynamics and who's on the team makes such a difference in these things. And yeah, we wanted to demonstrate like we are very serious. We want to do a good job. We want to be long-term, like thoughtful stewards of this business and of the team and of the clients and the relationships and the goodwill that's been built up here. And so, yeah, we're willing to spend money and spend time to do that. And the seller, same thing. He spent basically a whole week with me, which is a lot of time for him as well. And also a great way to demonstrate, like, does the business fall apart if he's not exactly in the day-to-day for a week, which is good as well.
I think there was also it was very clear early on that there was a good like cultural connection as far as the culture of how we wanted to run the business and how the founder and seller saw things. He actually told us later after we bought the business that after the first call, he had been looking up Grant, and there's a video online about Nonprofit Megaphone and its core values. And after watching that video, he told the CFO, who's still on our team, this is going to be the person who buys the business. So I think we just both saw kind of on both sides that it resonated well as far as what we value and the type of experience we wanted for the team. And so that was an important factor.
Yeah, you had the advantages of almost being a platform because of a brand that presented you to market. For a lot of buyers, whether it be like a culture Bible or handbook, whether it be disc assessments or a more in-depth executive assessments on personality, if you can send those types of resources to a target within like the first or second meeting where they can really get a download of who you are and your core values and what you believe and how you approach work, they fall in love with you as much as you fall in love with the business. And most people don't leverage that because it's either what's the numbers, what's the transaction, let's get to the thing that we've all been told is the next step to get serious, which is an LOI. These are great advantages. You went there. How did you report back? So Grant goes there, builds this deep relationship with an owner and a seller. Julia, it's your business.
I know.
How
I hear
did you
very
get?
little when he's there because of the time change and everything. But on the flight home, he typed up like a probably like 25-page dissertation on everything he learned, photos, the people he met, what he was seeing as the advantages and any like reservations or watch outs. Yeah, he kind of documented everything. And then we talked about it at length, of course, when he got back.
Grant, you're an analyst. Let's keep adding to the list in this one interaction, this one project. Julia, you get this long essay about the opportunity. The owner is feeling really confident. From the first call in person to making an offer, how long did that take? And then how did you get comfortable about the structure you used for your offer?
We had a first call. He then, I believe, made an offer the next week. The next week or the week after. We had a signed LOI within 2 weeks. And I think that I was there within 2 weeks as well. I actually can't remember what the exact, I think we put time on the calendar before the LOI was signed. And then once it was signed, I booked the plane tickets, if memory serves.
Were you basing this off of a valuation that the broker was using, so an asking price?
Yes, there was an asking price. Our belief is that from our past experiences, we actually had a significant difficulty ever trying to move anyone meaningfully off their asking price. And we followed the belief of you can either have your price and my terms or my price and your terms. And our view was we're going to give people their price and we're just going to tell them under what terms we can do that. And so in this situation, it ended up asking for seller financing that ended up being really helpful for making the transaction happen. And the negotiation was that quick. We basically talked, we're like, there's good news. We can give you your asking price. There's bad news. Some of it's going to have to be seller financed. This is the rationale behind that. We had a discussion for like 2 minutes and then it's like, okay, perfect. Like done. Yeah. It was very quick.
And that's what happens when you give someone what they want in a way that you can quantify a return. Now, the brokerage or broker, how involved were they? Or was it more of a finder? Because the process from first call to LOI to meeting in person was fairly quick. Was the broker helpful, hands off? How did you interpret their contribution?
The broker was helpful. And the broker also did not inject themselves into the process in a way that would have been unhelpful, which we had seen in the past, that sometimes it's like the broker's making this more complicated than it needs to be. Because the seller wanted to sell, we wanted to buy. We both felt comfortable with the price and terms. So the broker was really just sort of making sure that the wheels were lubricated and things were rolling along. But he did a really nice job.
What was the motivation for selling?
Retirement, interestingly.
The best.
Which is great. Yeah.
Any failed successions or failed exits previously by this owner? Or was this the first go?
This was the first run at that.
And then did you do your own pro forma? Did you work with your accounting? Okay, you're nodding.
We're some nerds here. So we did our own quality of earnings, essentially, where we got all the bank statements and we used them to reconstruct the financial statements to see if they matched. And they did. And so marketing agencies just aren't that complicated often. You have clients, you have team members, you have software and other costs. You put them all together. Thanks so much.
Yeah, professional service in general, right? They're easily understood businesses. The barrier to entry is low. It's not complicated. And as long as they're running a ship that, is above board, the financial statements, bank accounts, they tell you everything you need typically. What concerns did you have? Because, you're starting to get serious, buying your first business. You got a signed LOI. You're going into due diligence. What were some of the things you were worried about that came true? And what were some of the things that you were worried about that didn't come true?
I think stability was one of the biggest things I think anyone worries about when they buy a business, right? You're buying it based on the past, but what can we keep that stable in the future? And specifically, would all the team want to stay on, which is why Grant meeting everyone in person was really important. And then we also, in the contract, signed like a retention bonus for after the first year. And so just making sure the team was excited about the transaction, excited about kind of the future vision of where we want to continue to take the company, all that type of thing. And then also stability on the client side. So we worked with the seller to work on agreements with all of their past clients to make sure those would transfer over even after the change in ownership. Those did not end up being, I think those are things that anyone would worry about that did not end up necessarily being problematic, but were our big focus areas early on.
So when you were doing due diligence, the quality of earnings, evaluating the culture and the stickiness of key people and their material contribution to the delivery model, how did you start thinking about post-close integration, the plan for the business, both strategically and then the model? So we talked about your expectations for the first year, which you've outperformed. How did that come into fruition and run us through? How long did it take to close?
We closed in 45 days. I think the LOI was 45 days or 60 days, something like that. And we followed that timeline and that's when we closed. It was great.
It was perfect. It ended up being July 1st, which is just very clean from like how you keep track of financials. It's just like perfectly 6 months left in the year. It was the first of the month and made it easy for starting each of our, invoices with our clients are monthly. And so it was just smooth and easy to transition. And then what I had on my mind as I got started was like a couple key focus areas. Overall, the operations of the business were going quite well, and all the key folks on the team were retained. So, kind of continue as is on that. But then my two focus areas coming in were one, expanding sales and marketing efforts, because in the past that hadn't been a major focus, especially with the CEO in Romania, where our clients are in the US, had not been a major focus. And then the second thing was the EOS implementation that we already talked about a little bit.
Did you have any concerns about the international aspects of doing a deal this way? Like the team's there, you're flying back home, your team logs on Monday, they log out on Friday kind of business model?
Overall, I was excited about the international aspect of the team. I really like traveling and I like experiencing other cultures and getting to know people with different background and whatnot. I've continued to go to Romania on a regular basis. So I went briefly after the close and then once a quarter since then. So I think I've been 5 times so far. So I think overall the international aspect has been a positive. I will say there are definitely differences culturally that I've been navigating, but I think the team has been very gracious with me as I've learned. So overall, it's been good.
In that first year, how did that first year perform to what you modeled in due diligence as kind of an expectation, given the terms you were using to close the deal?
We basically modeled consistency with the prior 12 months and ended up doing better than that, which was wonderful. Yeah, we invest in now people that are doing this, and it's like the J curve is very common where at the beginning, like a J, there's like a little bit of adjustment period as things are, just it's more similar to a head transplant than it is to like, just swapping out identical pieces on a car. And so there's often that, but we're thankful to not have that. And that was wonderful. But yeah, we tried to be very conservative in the financial projections. Yeah. It's very easy to make a deal look awesome if you're just like, yeah, if we grow, 20% a year for the next 5 years, this is going to be great. And we think it's better to look at things like, let's assume no growth in year one. Let's assume 5% in the following years. What does it look like then? And use that as sort of your baseline and hope to outperform it, but do that as your analysis.
You had shared in our prep call that the valuation and the multiple was all things that kind of made you excited about the opportunity, because agencies typically trade, especially smaller businesses, anywhere between 2 to 3 times earnings. The retention of the clients over a period of time is one facet. Then whether it's monthly reoccurring, so support or ongoing engagements, these are all things that kind of tick up value or perceived value depending on the business type. How did you think about the valuation of the business versus what you were paying for it? And now that you've owned it for a year, has that been confirmed? And how do you feel about ultimately what you paid?
Yeah, we were on the lower end of the normal agency valuation multiple zone, but pluses and minuses. So all the clients are recurring and on monthly retainers, which is wonderful. Some larger clients, which is a positive and a negative because you have more client concentration risk. And so that's something we were definitely very cognizant of. Not meaningful sales and marketing, like Julia said, it primarily grown through relationships and referrals, which is wonderful. Means you have a good reputation, but it's hard to proactively make referrals happen on your own timeline. That doesn't necessarily work. And so we thought it was reasonable to attractive at the time. And I think that has borne out. Like surprisingly, it has gone, which never happens. It has gone fairly similarly to what we predicted, which is just hilarious because that is not the norm at all. The seller did turn down higher offers because he felt that Julia and me would be a cultural fit for the team and that we would sort of steward the culture that he'd created well. And he sort of thought, he made comments about how someone else wanted to buy this for more, but like they were a jerk and they just would have like run the team into the ground. And I don't want that to be my legacy, which gave us actually a lot of comfort that this is a good person for us to be doing business with because he cared about the team and the culture more than just like a very short term sort of dollar figure.
So what I heard you saying is based on your experience you have now in investing in searches and looking at various acquisitions, you got a very good first company.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is, so now we've invested in a lot of businesses personally, and now we're doing more through a fund that we've raised. It is funny because I think had we been really smart, we would have reversed the order. Invested in other people's transactions first, learned a lot, and then taken a big swing of doing one on our own. We were fortunate and everything has worked out and it's been wonderful. But it's funny because I now see some of the potholes that we avoided that we didn't even know existed at the time. So it's interesting to look back and it's been wonderful.
Juliet, you're now the CEO running an agency. How's that feel? Is it what you expected from a role? How have you had to evolve to meet the needs of the company? And what are some things that if we went back in time, we could give you as insights to make that first year of stewardship more successful?
Yeah, good question. I think overall it's been very positive. I think the highlights for me have been getting to work with the team, which has been really wonderful and really open to things like the OS implementation that we've been doing, as well as like I'm a very operationally minded person. So I really like being able to dive into our processes, our client strategies, et cetera, and use some of the things that I had learned in consulting to kind of help on the strategy side of things, which has been really fun. I think the things that have been more challenging as I kind of reflect back and think about what I would have told myself a year ago. One, it's definitely a different type of stress than the consulting world. I think obviously BCG was at moments incredibly stressful, but it's a very different type of stress than business ownership. BCG is all about, I say it's like FedEx. It's like 9 times as expensive, but you get it overnight. So it's all about like how fast can you do this? How perfectly and efficiently and effectively can you do things? And in the business owner world, there's not always that pressure of, this has to be done. It has to be done right now. But it's a little bit more of like an existential pressure of, how is the future of the company? Am I going to be able to continue providing for the team? Like things that feel just a little bit more emotional and existential. And so I think I've needed to learn a different skill set of how do I cope with that type of stress, which has actually been another way that I've leaned on Grant. I think he does lots of things that I used to find quite weird. Like every day he celebrates like 5 to 10 wins of the day of like things that were gains that he didn't have before the day. I always thought that was a little strange, but now that I'm in the world and I see how, it's very easy to feel defeated thinking about how much more perfect or better things could be. Just in an entrepreneurial environment where there's always so much room to grow. It's been helpful for me to have that kind of in my toolkit to continue to celebrate what is going well and the progress we are able to make.
Yeah, your path for professional and personal development changes through entrepreneurship then in the corporate world? What
Mhm.
are some of the things you prioritize on that, path to improvement over the past years? And what do you think you still need to double down in,
Mhm.
moving forward and building the company?
One of the things that I very much need to improve in that's a little bit more on the technical side, but has been important is sales. I would not consider myself an excellent salesperson. And I think as a lot of my focus has been on sales and marketing, I've needed to grow a lot more confident in sales. And I think a lot of that has come just through feel like an expert in SEO. It's driven a lot more confidence so I can approach sales calls more like a consultant, which is a vibe that I am comfortable with. So I can feel more like a doctor giving them advice on how to get better than like someone trying to sell them something. So I think that's been the most kind of significant thing I've grown in the past year. I think as far as the next phase of growth, Grant mentioned briefly, of kind of acquired another company that does review removal, which is a complementary service. So now I'm kind of growing in how to manage both of those things and think about integrations and ways we can be stronger together across both the capabilities. I think being a little bit more, right now, I'm a little bit compartmentalized about how I think about the two different parts of the business. And so being able to more seamlessly integrate that and run a more cohesive organization, I think will be my next phase of growth.
Let's unpack that because when we went through your vision for the company and I asked when was that vision formalized, you didn't have add-on acquisitions within your first year of ownership as part of the strategy. How did that come to be? And
Mhm.
then where do you see acquisitions given that, I mean, our sector is known for programmatic M&A. It's the adding on of complementary services and capabilities as kind of a standard operating procedure. Where do you see that playing into your projections for the next 5, 10 years for the company?
Yeah, it's been a really wonderful evolution. And to your point, was not something that was in the original model, forecast, plan, vision, etc. But we have known the founders of this company called Repspert, which is the company we ended up acquiring for quite some time, actually, before we even purchased LexiGate. And they are a couple of awesome guys who have a company that does review removal. So LexiGate specializes in search engine optimization. Company helps with removing one-star reviews. And so if you think about a company that's interested in improving their local rankings, getting your one-star reviews removed can help you with that significantly. And so after we acquired Repspert, we immediately kind of thought about how this could be powerful to be connected with them. So we actually white labeled their services as LexiGate for a while to our clients who needed one-star reviews removed. And we were also kind of talking with them about, is there a way we could partner further, because there's a lot of overlap in client bases. So Repspert has worked with over 1,000 law firms, which is our target client on the LexiGate side. And so potentially there would be a way to partner together more. And over time, it actually became more and more clear that they had been running this business for a while, had been incredibly successful, and were looking to take a step back from the operations, especially on the sales side of the business. And so then the opportunity came up for us to take on the sales side of the business and directly sell the Repspert product to their customers, their prospects, as well as use their customer base as an opportunity to then expand and offer them LexiGate's SEO services as well.
So when you write the book on this, you're going to look like geniuses because looking back, it sounds like this wonderful plan
Oh yeah.
that you crafted
It'd be
and,
great if we
the
could tell the
throes
story
of the dinner
that
table.
way. It was not the plan.
So how do you think about add-on acquisitions for where you're going? And in the law firm marketing space, there's a lot of precedent, both from private equity, strategic buyers, technology providers. There's a lot of interest there. How do you think about the business strategy now that you're, I mean, still only a little over a year into this business? So, like, how do you think about it?
I think now I'm definitely a big fan, but I think specifically the factors that made this a good fit was what we like about Repspert is it's a very kind of quick in with companies. It's a very clear value proposition. You have a one-star review, you want it off your profile, we can easily move forward with that. I think it would have been more of a struggle if we were to acquire a company that has something that's also a very long sales cycle like the SEO world. And so I appreciated that it was a very kind of complementary type of sale in a
Yeah.
way that's very different. So I think it would need to be the right fit, similarly kind of fits in as far as similar client base of offering services to lawyers, something that provides kind of a competitive differentiator for us, like Repspert does on the local SEO side. And then similar as far as fitting into the sales process in a way that makes sense. But if something else kind of checked those boxes, I think we would certainly explore it.
How long have you been a CEO now for?
1 year and 1 month and 15 days.
Where do you go other than Grant? Because he can't also be your executive coach. Where do you go to invest in yourself as a CEO, as a leader of people? And if Grant is that, fine, Grant, but just add it to the CV. You're just all things to Julia. And then the last bit is, what are your expectations you have for yourself for this business?
As far as coaching, I actually do have a coach who I work with, which is kind of another is unanticipated part that's been really fun in the business. I actually reconnected with someone I knew 2 consulting agencies ago who had done some coaching for me there. And she was actually interested in starting to grow some like freelance coaching on the side. And so it's been a huge, wonderful gift to be able to reconnect with her. And we meet every 2 weeks. She also helped me with an executive 360 where I got feedback from everyone in the company, which was really interesting and a helpful part of the process. And then now every 6 weeks, we set goals on what I'm trying to be working on and continue to grow according to those goals. And obviously other stuff comes up too. And then she helps me navigate that.
Yeah, it's one of the number one predictors of enterprise value creation is whether or not the executive team has executive coaches.
Interesting.
Also, in companies that sell for the highest valuations, you look at the ones that typically do have board advisors or strategic advisors who help them see around corners at various stages of growth. Because you've realized this, right? If you can compress time by having Grant's knowledge that he spent 9 years flushing out through his entrepreneurship journey, you get that in a single dose. And if you can then replicate that across all areas of an expanding business, you compress time and you can scale beyond kind of the limitations of your own development.
Totally.
So it's wonderful that you're doing that. You now, because your story is becoming more well known, have people reaching out to you. What do you think is the most common question or inquiry these people have for you? And what's your message to that audience?
I think the most common folks that reach out, at least that I've experienced, and Grant's experience might be different, is people who are searchers who just want to understand, what were you looking for when you looked for the business? Are the questions you wish you would have asked when you were in diligence, or things you wish you would have known? Just trying to learn from the experience and any watch outs. I think I also get a disproportionate percentage of female searchers. I think as myself, it's fun to be able to connect with other females who are interested in this world. I don't have the official stats, but I'm guessing it's not the majority. And so that's been fun to be able to connect with other people on the journey.
What I find interesting about you too is we typically see in a business school, or at least in people who get MBAs and really think through kind of investment banking and portfolio building as divestitures. Both of you, and Grant, you're an example of, have held a business and have the intention of holding a business for a long time. How do you think about exits? I know it's early, so you've just been in it for a short period of time, but Grant had a little bit longer. How do you think about exits? How do you think about value creation, the next storyline behind the agency after you have kind of this begin with the end in mind approach?
My view with Nonprofit Megaphone has always been we are in it for the very long term. We think that true, deep, enduring value often takes a long time to create. And I'm a big Warren Buffett fan. I love the idea of his purchase of See's Candy, which he bought in like 60 years ago, something like just a wild number of years ago, and has held the whole time. And I think they've received like $1 billion of distributions from a $20 million purchase that they made. To be fair, 60, 80 years ago, whenever it was, or that can't be possible. 60, 50. It's a long time. And they've grown it meaningfully. And we think that there's often meaningful compounding. I know that there's more, Julie can answer as well. I know there's more M&A activity in her world, and that's interesting. Definitely not part of the original plan, but it's interesting. And frankly, like chatting with you has been informative about how much is happening that we didn't even realize, really.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think the original vision and what still continues to be the vision is that, this is a great business that we want to continue to grow and is stable and cash flowing. So that it was never like a plan of let's buy this business and flip it and resell it or anything like that. So that yeah, continues to be our plan. But yeah, there is a lot of activity in the space. And I mean, we've been able to see, even for ourselves on the Repspert side, the power in combining some of these capabilities. And so we're open to exploring the right partnerships and or opportunities in either direction, but not our original intent.
Stepping out of the agency world for a moment, if you're talking directly to searchers, do you recommend they buy agencies? For a while, you hear a bunch of people go, how great it would be to buy an agency, because that would then be a cost center of a future business I buy, and I can use that agency to add value to another investment that I do. What's your stance on buying agencies if you're not experienced with agencies?
I think it's a horrible idea on average. Personally, I think that there is uh, a unique skill set that is highly specific to agencies that is difficult to know that you have for real unless you've kind of done it. So I think agency people buying other agencies, brilliant idea. I think that you're taking a meaningful risk if you do not know if you're going to be a good agency operator and you're going to buy one. I knew Julia was going to be because I know her extremely well and I know what it takes to be an agency operator from having done it. So it's like it felt reasonable in that case. But we invest in searchers, and we'd say that there are very few agencies, in my humble opinion, that are well run by a person who's entering having never experienced that world before personally. And maybe you have a different view, but that's that's been our experience.
100% agree. My favorite category who are not owners today are people who come from agency careers rather than going out and starting their own agency, assuming the mantle of already pre-existing client base and team. Again, it's like any domain experience. In private equity, we like to bring in a domain expert. We use M&A as a discovery tool into the industry. And then ultimately, we want someone who's going to oversee it, who has experience. That's my whole shtick on the industry is be an agency, have your expertise, and they'll go add on the pieces that, A, you maybe couldn't do organically, or challenged to do over your stewardship or administration of the business, and get to a certain size that is meaningful. So then when AI, which I do want to touch on before I let you go, before AI comes and scares everybody, or for the next technology disruption that's coming, you have some robustness across the business to weather the always changing technology landscape that we as agency owners always have facing us and our clients. So 100% agree. AI. So was AI a part of your risks of the go forward business and SEO when you were doing the deal? Something that you communicated with the seller about?
Yes. There was a lot of fear, especially right at the time that we were buying it, that AI was going to destroy all of SEO and SEO was going to cease to exist as a category and that it was completely over. And we felt comfortable being the contrarian viewpoint on that, which I think, who knows? Like, we'll see over the long term. But our view fundamentally is that the job of an agency is to be better at using technology and tools and platforms than their clients, because they're specialists and the client is forced to be a generalist in all the areas of their business. And so, in the big picture, the advance of tools that allow people to accomplish more, for me, allows an agency, if they adopt and use those tools and are thoughtful about it, to accomplish more. And then that allows them to create more value for their clients. And if they're doing value based pricing, it allows them to potentially have a more profitable operation that the client also benefits from because they're getting so much more value. So I'm actually long term bullish on all technological advancement as a accelerant for agencies in general, as long as they're riding the wave and not being crushed by it. And I think that it can be taken too far where you're like, well, if we have like fully autonomous, super intelligent agents that can do everything, like, I just think that it's easy to overhype that universe where it's like, okay, fine, like then the economy doesn't exist at all, I guess. But like until then, tools increase productivity, productivity increases value. If you're doing value-based pricing, that's a good thing. I'm excited.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, an agent still has to decipher between two law firms within the same market. And that's a very challenging solution, at least to anticipate, right? If you have a local presence, multiple options, your AI agent's going to choose how is it determining that? It's going to be the same things that we use to help agencies and help businesses and help law firms rank. It's going to
Totally.
be
Yeah.
how well you position yourself to the market.
SEO has evolved. SEO, even before the world of people searching on ChatGPT or other things, like SEO in the Google world has already been evolving from less of like just, are you checking the right boxes of having the right keywords in your, title tag in H1, and a little bit more emphasis on, is this truly the right law firm for the searcher, right? Looking at more information across, like, what are their verdicts? They offer 24/7 support. What are their reviews? That type of thing. And so the world of SEO was already going there. And so it's actually very complementary to now be able to say, this is also helping you in how you would show up in, like, if someone were to search in an LLM, or ultimately if some AI agent is making recommendations, like, they still have to get the information from somewhere. And those are the things that we help with.
Yeah. What I was trying to get you to reveal was whether or not you shifted from enthusiasm to skeptic, or skeptic to enthusiast in the deal.
Mhm.
So whenever we're evaluating an asset, we're always skeptical about the future performance of the business, and to kind of bring most sellers to a realistic expectation around future performance,
Mhm.
both so you can structure a deal that is within a margin of safety for your investment, but
Mhm.
also realistic in kind of what we can do after we buy it. And then many people were using AI as a threat to knock down price, especially in the sector. So I say it very crassly, which is every agency I speak to speaks very highly of AI not killing them because they have a gun to their head.
Mhm.
You're going to be pretty optimistic if you have a looming threat asking you whether or not it's going to wipe you out. That said, you put your money where your mouth is. You invested in a business. You're very confident in its deployment. You're working actively with your team to integrate AI. Think about it as an innovation for the industry, just like everything was from social, web, etc. My last bit would be, before I let you go, how are you two doing? Do you now have that stress that you were referencing, Julia, shared between both of you as entrepreneurs? Is it work, 365, all the time conversations? How are you managing that in the household?
Yeah, great question. I would say even before the acquisition of LexiGate, as mentioned, we met in entrepreneurship club. Like, our conversations have been business nerdy conversations since day one. So not really a huge shift in that aspect, but yeah, we do talk about work a lot. We've actually posed a rule that we try to pick one day a week, which is Sunday, and not talk about either of our work very much, because otherwise it just can consume a lot of the conversation. So that's been refreshing, but it's nice to be on the journey together.
Liked the balance too, because we're not doing the same business.
Mm.
We each have separate, I have Nonprofit Megaphone and Entrepreneurial Capital. Julia has LexiGate and now Repspert. And so it's fun to like chat about stuff, but I think it would be harder if
Yeah.
we were each in each other's operations, which we're not, which has been kind of nice.
Yeah, because we're not like blocking and tackling on issues and like, oh, why didn't you do this? Or, are you behind on that? We're not in the same business. And I think that helps.
Yeah, much does a lot. If you had to, but I guarantee you, Grant has thought about one day. Julia is such a great operator. uh, your utility in something that he cares about probably is obvious.
We
And
have a great team. I don't feel threatened by this.
Let's just say that you're totally right in that for years I was like, we have to get Julia into like a small business somehow. And anyway, this ended up being the right approach because she has expressed and continues to express zero desire to
I will never
ever.
report to Grant. That's
Yeah.
that's in multiple occasions.
well, you two, thank you so much for sharing your journey. It was extremely impactful and valuable for the listeners to hear. If someone wants to reach out to you, you've been so gracious with kind of coaching the community, creating content about the process of buying businesses. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Email email is probably best for me.
For me, LinkedIn or Twitter/X is fantastic.
Grant, Julia, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Peter.
Peter. This was awesome.